Hi everyone. Today let's talk about Nvidia earnings. Then of course we'll get into all the usual data and charts. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. So Nvidia reported 122% revenue growth on surging demand for their data centers, but unfortunately even with this massive growth it was just not quite enough. So the stock did slip a little bit on this earnings, if you can even call it that. You can see it's up 150% year to date, but after hours it did fall about 6.5%. So very minor fall compared to its gains, but it does affect markets, and we are seeing markets slipping on the back of this news. So shares fell up to 8% in extended trading. They did bounce a little bit. Earnings 68 cents versus 64. Revenue 30 billion versus 28 billion. And they said they expect that to jump to 32.5 versus 31.7. So that's an increase versus the street. And as you would expect, the chip maker continues to see surging demand for their chips as the AI race seems to be gaining steam at this point. And the stock is going crazy, of course, 150% this year after 240% the previous year. Market cap eclipsing 3 trillion, and it was briefly the most expensive public company in the world, and it is now just second to Apple, so it is still beating Microsoft. Absolutely massive, super important company, and they did do very well as we expected them to, but it just wasn't quite enough to maintain the current valuation. They said they expect demand to remain strong, and like I said, they expect revenue to continue to grow, but they did see margins slip a little bit to 75.1% versus 78.4%, which is up from a year ago, so a little bit choppy action there on the percentage for margins. Maybe that's why we're seeing a little bit of a slippage, because the growth story still seems to be intact in my opinion. Moving over to fear and greed, 52 versus a 52, so markets continue to stay flat despite this rollover that we keep seeing. We've been talking about it for a while, and it continues to show that way. Strength did roll a little bit, still in fear. Breadth continues to hover here, crazy, still in extreme greed. I think that's going to fade eventually. This is 200-day breadth, which continues to do okay. And then put call ratio, continuing to see that ramp. Makes sense, it got to another critical low, and it is going to push back up into these fear areas in my opinion, up in the 9 to 1 range. And then looking at volatility, saw a spike there, makes sense. Safe haven demand back into greed, which is interesting considering the selling that we're seeing. And then junk bonds still in extreme fear, makes sense. Looking at seasonality for a moment, we are expecting a little bit of bullishness based on this chart into the end of the month, but I don't think that's actually what we're going to get. Markets are rolling to the downside, so it'll be interesting to see if this follows through into the September time period. Looking at the earnings calendar, you can see pretty much green across the board except for HP missing on earnings just a little bit. Still beat on revenue though. Nvidia, of course, important. Salesforce beating. CrowdStrike beating despite their issues. We'll see how that plays in next quarter. And then for tomorrow, you still have Lulu, Autodesk, Marvel, Dollar General, Brown-Forman for you whiskey lovers, and then Ulta Beauty, fairly interesting, as well as Best Buy. Could be a volatile one to watch. Moving over to the economic calendar, you can see consumer confidence was good yesterday, and then for today there was basically nothing. 5-year note auction, about 0.5% lower than the previous read, so that was pretty good. And then for tomorrow, we do have GDP numbers. That's going to be interesting at 8:30, as well as pending home sales, 7-year note auction, and then to finish it up for the Friday, CPI for the Eurozone, as well as PCE data and Michigan inflation data, as well as consumer sentiment. Moving over to Max Payne, you can see current stock price $5.55. Max Payne sitting there at $5.50, so that moved up a little bit with today's price action. Total options still pretty high at 1.5 million. Put call ratio still pretty high as well at 2.68. Starting to get close to those put walls, 550, 545. Still expecting a finish between 550 and 557, so we did get below that call wall. Starting to get into this kind of low range. Wouldn't shock me if we saw a little bit more selling with how markets are looking, but I don't expect to get below 540. Moving over to the charts, looking at the S&Ps, you can see this has been doing basically exactly what we thought it was going to. So we got the big down day, that was our indicator, 3 days of consolidation, and now we got another big down day, breaking that 9 EMA. Looking for a test of this trend line here, that looks like about another 1.25% lower to that trend line, and then we'll see what happens after that. But realistically, I think the price target is closer to that 21 EMA, which is about 2.2% lower. Right now, we are at that RSI. You can see probably going to touch it tomorrow. We'll see what happens there. If this breaks down, we're probably going to get back to these previous lows, and then we'll see what happens on the price action. Is the price action going to double tap these lows, or are we going to establish a higher low on price with a double tap on RSI? So something to watch, but right now everything continues to look bearish, and you can see it here on the hourly chart. We got that big down move, consolidation. We expected the break, got it here today, touched that next level at 540, 554.87 on the after hours pricing. You can see the 200 sitting there at 554.20. If we get below that, that is all of them there on the 1 hour chart. So that would be a full bearish trend. You can see the 921 and 55s are already stacked. Momentum on that daily chart continues to roll. We did hit oversold conditions, but that after hours price action did take us to a new low. So pretty big move on that, almost 1% after hours, and everything continues to look pretty terrible. Moving over to the Tasty charts here on the 4 hour, you can see that next level of support is that 55 EMA, which is at 551.74. We'll see if we get into that zone tomorrow. Probably will. Lowest ATR band is also sitting there at 552.05. So right in that same zone. Might see just a little bit of a bounce from there. Usually you do. You can see last time we touched it here, we did get a little bit of sideways action at that ATR band. You can absolutely still go lower later, but we've seen it before. Hit it here, get a retracement, fall back to that level, get a retracement, and then get another fall back to that level. So just something to consider. Might see a little bit of a retracement after we touch that ATR band, but either way, that gives you a price target of 552.07. Moving over to the NASDAQ, pretty much the same thesis. We're getting this rolling price action. We expected a down day. Sure enough, we got it. Momentum continues to roll. RSI has already broken here on the NASDAQ. Looking for that 21 EMA, which is another 1.5% lower. Then we'll see what happens after that. It's probably going to push through it realistically. Your next trend line sitting about 2.6% lower. So we'll see how this plays over the next couple days. It continues to look pretty bearish there. And then looking at the shorter time frames here, you can see what it looks like on the hourly chart. Big down move, hit the trend, sold off more, consolidated, sold off here today, bounced at that 468.05 level, hit the trend, hit VWAP, hit the 9 EMA, hit the level at 471.93, and then just look at that selling action after hours on the Nvidia earnings. Probably was going to happen anyway, but Nvidia is accelerating that massive down move. It's already fallen about $6 after hours, so about 1.25%. Next level, 464.50. We'll see what happens there, but realistically, you should expect this is going to continue to break. Everything looks awful. And then moving over to the Tasty charts, you can see with that after hours price action, we've already hit that lowest ATR band. We'll see what happens after that. Are we going to get a little bit of a retracement? Are we just going to slowly grind lower? Volume picking up there on today's selling, not great either. ATR band was at 465.62, and you can see after hours we are well below that at 464.96. And jumping out to the daily chart just to give that a little bit more context, that puts us all the way down here into the middle of the range and that 55 EMA. Momentum continues to roll here just like we expected it to after touching that ATR resistance. Touch that level, rejected. It's been pretty much a textbook trade at this point, and it continues to look bearish with about another 1% potential, at least in the short term. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow. The Russell was down 0.68, continues to hover in this 216 area. It's actually falling a little bit after hours with everything else, which is kind of interesting. 9 EMA sitting there at 216.26. Touched that level, got a little bit of a bounce from there. See if this zone holds or not. Got some trend support in there as well around that 215.60 area, and then my level at 215.42. And then the Dow also got below this trend, fell a little bit, touched the 9 EMA and bounced. Momentum is stepping down though, so now that looks like it's going to fall along with everything else. It's been hanging out a little bit better than everything, but now it's probably going to start to fall as we get closer to that everything sell-off that I think is coming. Moving over to the Mag 7, down 0.95 after hours, another $4, $5 or so, or another 2%. Push through that 21, push through VWAP. Next trend support's down at 254, which is about another $2.70 lower. We'll see how that plays. Momentum continues to roll, RSI breaking down, volume accelerating. Everything says this is going to continue to fall in my opinion. Moving over to stocks that moved, we got super micro cratering. We kind of expected that, right? So we talked about it. We were at the 21 EMA. We got a down move, got a low, and then we bounced slightly back to the trend and then got a massive gap and fall. 19% on the day, and then even more after hours, falling about $30 after hours. So another 10% or so. Super micro cratering on that Nvidia news. Continues to look awful. Huge volume there. Not great. And then looking at Pod. This is an insulin company. This is something I have not looked at pretty much ever, so I put all this structure on here today, and it's actually been fairly reasonable. You got a low here, got that trend started, tapped it here in May of 24, rallied up to that upper trend after it was established here, just copying and pasting it to that level, and then you can see hit that level, pulled back to the low, and now we are getting this kind of rocket ship style move, 6% on back-to-back days. If this follows through on the move, you should see a test of this trend, which is about another 10% higher from here, so probably some more gas in the tank on this stock. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft, Apple continues to struggle at that 230.28 level, falling a little bit after hours. Momentum RSI looking for that break, just like we've been watching for pretty much on everything else. It's been holding up a little better. We thought maybe it was accelerating here, but continues to struggle in that zone. And then the earnings today is probably not going to be great for it. And then Microsoft, same thesis, down on the day after rejecting that 413.36 level, back below all the EMAs. Now we're right at that 200, and now that's breaking after hours, down almost 1% after hours. Nvidia having a massive effect across all of these different companies, as we expected. And you can also see we're well below the RSI now, so this is probably going to break back down to that 394.22 area. Moving over to Tesla and Nvidia. Tesla did exactly what we thought, touched the trend here. Now we're going to see what happens after touching that 200 and the trend and the level. So critical zone, if it pushes through that, we're probably headed back to the 144 down at 192.17. Momentum bearish, RSI bearish, just as we expected. And then looking at Nvidia, we were in this consolidation, sold on the day, sold into the end of session, and you can see big gap down, almost $10 after hours. So not super great there. Let's go ahead and go big on that. Looking at the 12-hour chart so we can see that after hours price action, almost 7% on that candle. Momentum bearish, RSI bearish. Trend support sitting down at that 110 level, so potential for another $7 if that 55 EMA breaks in there at 116.14. Moving over to Amazon and Google, these continue to fall as we expected, 1.3 and 1.13% respectively. Momentum bearish, RSI bearish. Google took out the SMA here today on the RSI, so that looks broken as well. Continues to sell. Still have some potential for support at the trend at 162.78. You can see we did throw a wick, did get a little bit of a bounce in there, but momentum stepping down, RSI breaking, continues to show more bearish structure. I've been talking about this one for a while as a big bear flag, big move down, bear flag setup, selling off, broken structure. And I would expect at least a retest of that 200 SMA down in the 157.50 area. Moving over to staples and discretionaries, got a little bit of an everything sell. Both of these sold 0.42, 0.97 respectively. Momentum on staples finally starting to cool slightly. Makes sense. Can't just go straight up forever. Slight pullback in this ridiculous uptrend that we've been seeing ever since that 79.50 area broke. And now looking at discretionary, this continues to look like pretty much everything else. We can extend out that trend line a little bit. Broke that trend line pretty cleanly, touched the 55 EMA. Still expect this to get down into that next level at 180.10. Moving over to Breadth, you can see 20-day and 50-day both posting a bearish day, but not super bad yet. We are seeing that rolling effect. We did expect that, but it hasn't accelerated quite yet. Still in this really expensive zone here on 20-day. Once we get below the 77 area, you can see it multiple times. Once you get below this kind of 77 to 74 area, that's when you start to see those accelerations. So have a little bit of time, certainly could pick up a little bit, but momentum rolling down, RSI rolling down, just like everything else. 50-day hanging in there, not super negative, touching that 9 EMA, but still falling slowly after breaking below that 77.46 level. Moving over to the dollar, it's finally happening here. We are starting to get a little bit of dollar strength. So you got a low, slightly lower low, but then you got a high, higher high here, which is interesting. Momentum fading a little bit, so you could see a little bit more dip there. But look at that candle, pretty decent. Didn't get all the way to the trend, starting to see a little bit of a retracement. We talked about how extended it was here, and now we're starting to see that move up. So we'll see how it plays. 9 EMA sitting right there. 101.25 is the target. Probably going to touch that at least. Momentum starting to roll back to the bull side. Maybe we see that grinding action. And if the dollar does stabilize, I expect equities to continue to sell off pretty aggressively. So starting to see that come to fruition. First candle, we'll see if we get the continuation. Moving over to yields, we really haven't been talking about these because they have not been doing very much, but now you can see we're starting to get interesting. So you can see 2-year 3.86 selling off, headed back to that low at 3.66, 10-year 3.839. So we're just barely inverted, just a couple of hundredths between these two. The 2 and the 10-year looking like they're finally going to gain some strength. 2-year selling, 10-year rolling to the upside, momentum building. Seems like this is going to happen within the next couple days, and it seems like forever we've been in these conditions. And usually once that happens, that is the trigger. We start to see some pretty big issues in the economy. So something to watch. This is likely to happen within the next couple days. Moving over to bonds, J&K continues to hover, but momentum continues to fade. So this looks like a bit of a consolidation top now. Will we fall, establish a higher low, and then rally again? Hard to say at this point. But it seems like this monumental rally is kind of culminated here, at least in the short term. And then here on TLT, again, consolidation, expecting a short-term pullback. I don't think it'll be long-lived, and I don't think it'll be very deep. But it does seem like this is a topping pattern, at least for the short term. A couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks, especially with the 10-year starting to roll to the upside. So we'll see how it plays. Got a high, lower high, probably going to roll down here to these lower levels, 95.50, 96.50, somewhere in there, at least in the short term. Moving over to the VIX, still getting that higher low setup. Got the spike up here today. Momentum continues to roll to the upside. RSI breaking above the SMA. So pretty much everything I said yesterday that was going to happen happened today, and it seems like we are going to get that at least for the next couple days. So hang in there. Probably some bearishness to come. Trade it to the bear side. Otherwise, be patient if you are looking to get into the long side. Everything looks quite bearish. Moving over to my accounts, I stayed generally flat on the day, not too bad. Says I lost a bunch of money, but that's partly because of that after hours price action. You can see that huge move after hours of about $6. I do have a bunch of calls on that are going to help protect me from that move once the market opens tomorrow. Probably not all of the loss, but definitely some of it. And you can see here, I've got another $3 or so, or $300 potential on this. So that'll come in, help cut that down. And then you can see on this covered call, I rolled that down and in to 472 for 8 days from now. So that's another $6 on each of those, or $1,200 total on that over the next week. And then I continue to leave this one alone at 492. Probably going to roll that down tomorrow, actually. We'll see how that one plays. That was already at $600 profit, almost at halfway profit there. But that's going to open much lower tomorrow. Probably going to get down to, I would guess, $800, maybe $900 profit on that tomorrow. And if markets continue to fall, I'll probably roll it down like I mentioned. So we'll see how it plays. Should get some of this money back. And then looking at the IWM, didn't change this position at all. We're at 216 for going to be 1 day from now, which is pretty much right where I'd want to be anyway. It's at about 50% profit. So there's another $200 or about 1% left in that. And after hours, that's falling about 50 to 60 cents there as well. Pretty much right where I'd want to be. If this continues to sell, I might roll it to 0 DTE, but right now I feel okay with it. Let me know down in the comments section what you think of the Nvidia earnings. Is it going to continue to drag down markets like it is after hours today, or will we see a little bit of a bounce tomorrow? Definitely like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.